for joining us. Well, do you have your glasses ready? The total solar eclipse is less than 24 hours away. Police, transit, and health officials are urging everyone to have a plan and stay safe. Anam Khan joins us now with what you need to know.
Shannon, we're right around the corner of a total solar eclipse to parts of Ontario, and Toronto will see partial totality with over 90%. So just how excited are people for this historical event? These students made the trip all the way from Michigan.
We came to Toronto today, and then we're going tomorrow to the Niagara Falls.
Scale of 1 to 10?
Yes.
4?
Oh, okay.
I'm going to work and then I'm going to go back home and cuddle up with my kid.
Very excited. I'm here from since July, so it's going to be my first eclipse.
With viewing parties and events across the province, the OPP says to expect delays, traffic, and be cautious, especially if you're heading toward Niagara Falls, which is expecting 1 million people.
We know it's an exciting event. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. So we encourage people to get off the roadway, park in a safe place, and view the eclipse from there. But please do not get out of your vehicle on a highway or a roadway to view the eclipse. Also, do not photograph or video record while driving.
They're also telling drivers to put their headlights on during the total eclipse, which will last a few minutes. Cities on the path of totality say they'll be closing some local roads. Metrolink says you can avoid the traffic and hop on a train.
Niagara Falls is obviously in the path of the totality, so a lot of people traveling in that direction. So we're going to be increasing service on Lakeshore West specifically. What we're going to be doing is adding 3 trains in the morning leaving Toronto.
And when the big moment is finally above us, experts say do not look directly at the sun.
Anytime somebody looks at the sun, whether it's during an eclipse or otherwise, there's a risk of permanent chemical and photochemical damage to the retina. And if a person looks at the sun long enough through an unfiltered view, whether it's an eclipse or otherwise, they can have permanent damage and permanent loss of vision.
He says the only way to view the eclipse is through sun-safe filters, like these glasses. And make sure they have the ISO icon and reference number 123, 122. That way you know they're certified for safe viewing. Shannon?
Thanks, Anam. Sophia joining us now. We both have our glasses handy. You've been tracking this also closely. The million-dollar question, right? Where's the best place to be tomorrow?
Yeah, and there's a lot of cloud cover on this path of totality, but it is shifting so quickly, even as I've been tracking it this evening. Pleasant surprise and a good possibility of some real sunny breaks now for many of you in southern Ontario. Let's zoom on this path of totality now from west to east, shall we? That cloud deck that we talked about earlier that's going to be covering much of Ontario is progressing a little quicker. Nice chance for some clear skies for those of you in southwestern Ontario, but here's the drama. For those of you in Hamilton and Niagara, this is going to be a game time buzzer decision whether or not you get a clear sunny break or whether or not you have some of this thicker low level cloud that could obstruct this viewing experience. Meanwhile, it's a higher level cloud which won't completely obscure the view in parts of eastern Ontario, but it will dim and mute the whole experience. Max peak times anywhere from about 3 minutes and 15 seconds to 3 minutes and 30 seconds for those of you during totality. The whole experience about a 2-hour event, depending on where you are across the province, or many across the country will see the partial solar eclipse, even 90% coverage up to places like Sudbury. You will need your solar eclipse glasses on for the entirety of your partial eclipse experience, even though that same high-level cloud deck is still in places far north as places like Timmins and Thunder Bay. You can tell why people are gathering for this. Here's a stat for you, Shannon. It's a 1 in 2,000 shot that you will live in your lifetime through a path of totality of a total solar eclipse. And so we wanted to more about the viewing angle when it comes to solar eclipse. And it really does matter what angle you are seeing the solar eclipse at. Fret not if you have clouds above you, because if you are looking at a southwest angle, which is where this eclipse is going to come from, at a 45-degree angle above the horizon. I know that sounds like a lot of math, but what this means is if you are looking through that cloud deck, you could actually see from a southwest direction a pretty cool shot of this solar eclipse. And mind you, scientists will be really watching all the events events of this quite closely and really quantifying a lot of data. I will say one more thing as well. Distance matters. A distance of even 5 kilometers in places like Oakville or Burlington could mean the difference between a 5-second or 30-second moment of totality to a 1 minute or 2 minute moment of totality. And it's 1 to 2 minutes of a true window into the secrets of the sun, Shannon.
Also fascinating, and I know some people are wondering when it's actually safe to take off their glasses and what they will see.
Yeah, great question, and it's a really great sequence of events. So we mentioned that during a partial solar eclipse, you will need to keep your glasses on for the entirety of the event. Different story, though, if you are in totality. Here's what you will see in the order that you will see it. First is the phenomenon known as Bailey's beads. You see it there for only 15 seconds before totality. It's where the little pinpricks of sun are seen beyond the crests and ridges of the moon. And then you see this, the diamond ring effect. That's your cue that totality is about to begin. That's when you can take off your glasses and you will witness the sun's corona, a sight that you hardly ever get to see. That's that white outer atmosphere, that very hot outer atmosphere of the sun. It'll last for however long your max totality is before you see the diamond ring effect again on the other side, cueing you to put on your glasses again and enjoy those effects in reverse, including Bailey's beads again, and of course the lightning of the umbra, which is the shadow of that moon. Just fascinating for all the scientists that will be watching this. And coming up, I'll tell you a little bit more about what your viewing experience could look like depending on what kind of cloud is above you, but we're still keeping our fingers crossed for clear skies.
We are, and I know you were doing fun activities with the kids today too, so we'll talk to you about that as well. Thanks, Sophia.
Awesome.
One region expecting as many as 1 million eclipse enthusiasts is Niagara. Katie Nicholson is there, where local businesses are finding all sorts of fun and delicious ways to celebrate.
These are our eclipse donuts, Galaxy Eclipse donuts.
Monday's eclipse is still hours away, but these celestial treats are flying off the shelves.
Yesterday was extremely busy. Lots of people coming in for the donuts, lots of people coming in we did like little eclipse brownies with stars on them too. So yeah, I think it's just going to be crazy.
Half an hour away, this Niagara on the Lake restaurant also full throttle. They haven't had to prepare for crowds like this since Mumford & Sons fans flooded the town 9 years ago.
We, as a town, ran out of money in our ATMs, so there were huge lines outside. I would imagine there'll be something similar to that. Hopefully the ATMs don't run out of money.
Greg Virch's winery is hopping with eclipse sippers. He's curated a wine tasting for each stage of the event.
Almost like an eclipse, where you start with something light and bright. You work your way through the darker red wines that we have here, and then you might finish again with the sun coming out.
Of course, that depends on the weather, and so does crowd size. Estimates have varied from 1 million to several 100,000 in the Niagara region. The city brought in extra portable cell towers to keep people connected. Officials have prepped for over a year, but still don't know what to expect.
We've made a good plan, a robust plan, but we just don't have a hard number. And the hard number could be a factor. If it's low, it's one thing. If it's large, it can be another.
Science has to be safe.
For many, this will be a game day decision. Others have planned to be here for years. This New Jersey couple drove 8 hours just for this experience.
We didn't see the complete eclipse in 2017, and I have friends that traveled to see it and experienced the 100% darkness, and at that time it was put on my bucket list.
Okay.
And 20 years, who knows where we'll be in 20 years, so live for today.
Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Niagara Falls.
A major crime bust to tell you about. Peel police say they found 20 stolen vehicles worth an estimated $1.8 million. 3 men are now facing charges. They were caught after a joint investigation with Canada Border Services Agency.
An investigation began in a local trucking yard in Brampton, expanded to Bolton and the Port of Montreal, where these particular vehicles were destined for overseas.
The men range in age from 29 to 62 years old. They face a number of charges, including trafficking stolen goods. Well, we now know the name of the man killed in a violent attack in Toronto this weekend. He is 51-year-old Jolly Ann. Police are saying little else. It happened just after 6 a.m. Saturday morning in front of some shops at Bathurst and Wilson Officers say there was some kind of fight between two men when a sharp-edged weapon was pulled. There's no suspect description being released from police so far. Much more to come on this story. We'll bring you more details as we learn them. Talks aimed at a new ceasefire and hostage release resume in Egypt as the Israel-Hamas war marks a grim milestone, now in its 6th month.
זוהי המדיניות של ממשלת ישראל.
That's Israel's prime minister. He's saying Hamas demands we're blocking a deal, not Israel. And he said the current international pressure on Israel is hardening the Hamas stance. In southern Gaza, Israel withdrew more troops. 1 brigade now remains. It came as Israel reported increasing war readiness at the Lebanon border and amid the ongoing delay in the long-threatened assault on Rafah. As Clara Pasica shows us, this weekend once again saw thousands of people in Ontario filling the streets at rallies demanding the Canadian government do more to stop the violence.
Very sad, very, very, very worried.
Maayan Shavit's cousin is one of 100 Israeli hostages the country believes are still being held alive by Hamas since that October attack, when Hamas killed 1,200 people. In Toronto Sunday, she was one of hundreds of people in Nathan Phillips Square, once again demanding the release of hostages.
I hope that finally the Canadian at least will open their eyes and understand that it's wrong and you can't bargain with human.
She's hoping the Canadian government will use its power to get the Red Cross to check on the well-being of hostages. Meanwhile, the United Nations says hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are starving amid Israel's bombardment and ground offensive. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says more than 33,000 people have been killed. As they have since the start of the war, pro-Palestinian groups rallied this weekend calling for a ceasefire.
It's not just a ceasefire we're demanding. A ceasefire is the first step needed to make sure we're letting aid and food in to those who need it.
This isn't a small subsect of society. The majority of people living in Canada want an end to the genocide.
The Deputy Prime Minister spoke about the grim 6-month anniversary.
Canada's priorities are to have the hostages released, to have a ceasefire, and for the humanitarian aid that people urgently need to be delivered.
Sentiments echoed by the Prime Minister.
Obviously, the humanitarian costs of this crisis are abominable, are horrific. The hurt on families is tremendous. We need to see a ceasefire in which Hamas lays down its arms and releases the hostages.
The leader of the official opposition, Pierre Poilievre, joined demonstrators at Nathan Phillips Square.
The Israeli government and the Israeli people have not only the right, but the obligation to defend themselves and to fight back.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the hostages have to be returned before a ceasefire is possible, something this Toronto rabbi agrees with.
The ceasefire only rewards Hamas. A ceasefire without the immediate, unconditional, full return of Israel's hostages is what's necessary in order to get to that moment. And anything short of that is just unacceptable.
Both Hamas and Israel are now sending teams to Egypt for ceasefire talks. Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
The Bank of Canada will make its next interest rate announcement on Wednesday. Safe to say many Canadians would like to hear some relief is on the way, but economists say that likely won't happen until June.
Of course, there's always a chance the bank could make that decision in the April, in their April announcement. Although I think it's probably more likely in the early June announcement. One of the benefits that we will see in the April announcement is this is one of the bigger announcements. So every second announcement, they publish their updated statistics and updated projections on what they think is going to happen with inflation and what their thinking is around inflation and what they're watching. And so we'll get that update on April 10th, on Wednesday, which will give us a better idea of what the bank is thinking inflation is going to do for the rest of the year.
The Bank of Canada has been working to rein in inflation, setting a target of between 1% and 3%. It was below 3% in both February and January. As you heard, though, most experts expect the bank will leave the rate unchanged at 5%, its highest level since 2001. The Blue Jays are gearing up for their home opener tomorrow. We spoke to some excited fans ahead of the big game.
Excited for the new season, different team, renovations to the stadium.
I'm looking forward to see the Blue Jays, which will be tomorrow. And yeah, the Blue Jays go for the win.
Go Jays go. Rogers Center showing off phase 2 of some major league renovations at the ballpark. There's also some new food being served up. The Jays taking on Seattle. First pitch set to be thrown just after 7 o'clock. It's been a slam dunk year for college basketball. March Madness viewership has been at an all-time high, with 2 stars dominating on the court and in the headlines. Jamie Strachan brings us their stories as the tournament comes to a close.
Perfection with a touch of sweet redemption. Undefeated South Carolina.
With the eyes of the sporting world on Iowa's Caitlin Clark, it was South Carolina's season for the ages that took center stage. An undefeated season, 38 straight wins, capped off with an NCAA national championship.
I'm just so proud of our team, and it feels great. It hasn't sunk in yet, man.
It caps a historic moment for women's college basketball, moving from niche to mainstream and to the top of the sporting world. Clark, the all-time leading scorer in the women's game, the headliner.
No one has done more to grow the popularity in a broad way of this game.
I don't want my legacy to be, oh, Caitlin won X amount of games or Caitlin scored X amount of points. It's, you know, I hope it's what I was able to do for the game of women's basketball.
The women's tournament drew record TV audiences, far larger than the men's tournament, and commanded record ticket prices, and was even part of a skit on Saturday Night Live.
It's just hard to get excited when there's better games on.
You mean the NBA?
Nah, the women's tournament.
For fans, especially here in Canada, there's more to come. Toronto's Zach Edey leads Purdue University against the University of Connecticut in the men's final Monday night.
It's a really big deal, but obviously we still have a game to play.
Edey's story is also inspiring. He didn't play basketball growing up until his 7'4" frame attracted the basketball world.
He's dedicated himself, and again, if anybody said that 3-4 years ago that this was going to be the path that he was on, I think they'd be liars.
He certainly figured it out. Recently named NCAA Player of the Year for the second year in a row. With players like Edey and Clark set to turn pro, a generation of new stars to cheer on. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
If you are headed to Niagara tomorrow for the eclipse, you may want to stop by Hamilton. It's now home to the best cheese pizza slice in the world. Cowabunga Pizzeria earned the title at this year's Pizza Expo in Las Vegas. We spoke with one of the co-owners who told us about a luggage mishap that almost ended their competition.
The trip was amazing. It was a trip in Vegas, so just going to Vegas in itself for the first time was awesome. I got to experience all of that, and the rest of the team definitely got to experience Vegas as well. On top of that, we got to go to the expo, and that was incredible. The competition itself, it was surreal. It was honestly a movie. I feel like it would have gone a lot smoother if we hadn't lost our luggage on the plane. Essentially, we had packed up a whole bunch of things, dough, sauce, our cheese, on the luggage with us, and we had brought some backups, like some emergency just in case, worst case scenario backups with us on the actual check-in bag itself. We were there just waiting for our luggage. Some of our baggage got back with us, but that was the baggage that had just clothing and stuff inside of it, which is obviously also important, but it's not going to necessarily win us, a trophy for back home. We needed the dough, and we didn't have any dough, so we had called up one of our co-workers back home here, and we had gotten him to come fly it out with like a 12-hour notice. Shout outs to Sean for coming on out and helping us out there. Within 24 hours he was at the hotel with the dough, and we had brought it to the expo on Thursday, and we had competed with it. But it definitely added to the perseverance that we had to have when we were out there. We just had to make sure that we didn't give up. We definitely went in there with a winning mindset, whether we lost or not. We're always gonna learn something new from it. But when we had actually won, it was definitely a major sigh of relief. It's a great moment for both of us. It almost feels like we're bringing the Stanley Cup home to the city with the type of recognition we've received and how proud everybody's been for us.
Expect the lineups there, expect the lineups everywhere with the prime spots to watch the eclipse. And I know you've got some advice for things that people can bring along for the experience.
Yeah, there's many things you can add to your arsenal for your viewing experience. But first, as we were watching that last whole story, who else was singing, "When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie"? That's amore. Perfect eclipse food, pizza. Okay, let's talk about things you can bring with you. As you said, Shannon, during the partial solar eclipse, you need to have your eclipse glasses on for the entirety of the event. As we keep saying, that's really anywhere outside of that path of totality. We want you to do so safely and, well, stylishly as well. How about MacGyvering your eclipse glasses, especially if you have young ones at home? Most eclipse glasses are made for an adult size head, and you don't want any gaps in there to risk any eye damage. This doesn't look pretty. It's a bunch of elastics and some rubber bands, but it'll do the trick. They're supposed to fit tight like swim goggles. And then if you are lucky enough to be in that path of totality, here's some other things you can bring along to vary your viewing experience. Again, not pretty, but really easy to make at home. A cereal box pinhole viewer, Shannon, a little bit of aluminum foil, some white paper inside, and some regular old cardboard. It reflects the projected image of the sun when you look in. You can also use something as simple as a colander that will reflect again the projected image of the sun on something like a white sheet would be a really good tip. And I told you earlier, I'd tell you what the eclipse would look like if you do have high level cloud in place. Yes, if you have low cloud, you might get some of those great breaks. But if you do have high level cloud, like maybe in Eastern Ontario, think of a winter's day, a cold winter's day, when you've got that halo of the sun reflecting those ice crystals. That's kind of the dimmed, mute experience you will most likely have. Models are really changing though. This is one of my take-home messages, is you still could get very lucky and things can still change in the next 12 hours or so. And then after the eclipse, Shannon, there is some weather to quickly mention. We're getting a ton of rain, so this whole experience could have been much worse. Big rainy system coming in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the potential of even localized flooding and snow. So we got lucky. Take-home message as we put on our glasses, Shannon, is to look up and have awe and wonder of the beauty of the universe and our place in it as we revel in this once-in-a-lifetime event. How about that?
Absolutely. Enjoy it with your kiddos tomorrow. I know you're going to make it super fun for them, and you've made it so much fun for us tonight.
Well, you too, my friend. Thank you for letting me ramble on about all things science.
We love it. Thanks, Sophia. We want to tell people tomorrow about where to check out all of our coverage. CBC News Network is the headline. We've got you covered all day long, starting at 6 a.m. for a special edition of Morning Live. It goes on all through the day. We've got another special starting at 1 p.m. Lots of fun. You find us on CBC News Network, CBC Gem. Enjoy it, stay safe, and we'll see you next weekend.